I probably should have closed the door when I saw him standing there, but I didn't. I let him in, and just a few minutes later, he said, "I only came to pray." You won't believe what really happened after that. How a simple sentence cracked open everything I had quietly buried for years: the loneliness, the longing, the slow unraveling of trust. This isn't just a story about temptation. It's a story about what we forget to protect when love becomes routine. If you've ever felt invisible in your own home, leave a single dot in the comments. You're not alone. And if stories like this make you pause and reflect, subscribe now. You might just hear one that feels a little too familiar. To those of you who've been listening to the stories on this channel, thank you. Your support means more than you know. It's what keeps us going. And it's why we're here, ready to bring you the next story. Now let's begin. It was a quiet Saturday afternoon in Pinefield, North Carolina. The kind of small town where nothing much changes, and that's usually a comfort. The sky was overcast, and the rain had started falling in soft waves around noon. Not a storm, just a steady rhythm that made the house feel smaller, quieter. I was alone. Andrew, my husband of 16 years, had left the night before on a last-minute work trip to Raleigh. He wouldn't be back until late Sunday. The plan was simple: a weekend to myself, something rare, even welcome. I had just stepped out of the shower. My gray robe was tied tight around me, my hair still damp, the scent of lavender soap rising faintly from my skin. I didn't rush. I had nowhere to be, no one to talk to. The house was clean, the laundry done. All I had planned was a quiet afternoon and maybe some reading by the window. That's when the knock came. 3 soft taps on the front door. Not loud, not urgent, just unexpected. I paused. The kind of pause where time stretches a little. I wasn't expecting anyone. I crossed the living room barefoot on hardwood and looked through the peephole. It was Pastor Marcus. I blinked. He stood there on the porch in a long navy coat holding a black umbrella, rain dripping neatly off its edge. He wasn't wet, but his presence seemed to carry the weather with him, quiet still, a little heavy. I opened the door. "Pastor Marcus, I didn't expect—" He smiled gently. "I was in the neighborhood," he said. "Andrew mentioned he'd be out of town this weekend. I thought maybe I'd stop by, just to check in, maybe share a short prayer." I hesitated, just long enough to feel it. Then I stepped aside. "Of course. Come in." He folded his umbrella carefully and entered. The scent of the rain came in with him, along with something else I couldn't place maybe. Old books. Familiar, but distant. I pulled my robe a little tighter, not because it was loose, but because I suddenly felt very aware of myself, aware of him, aware of the silence between us. We walked into the living room. Nothing dramatic, nothing new. But it didn't feel like any of the other visits before. And somewhere deep down, I knew something had shifted. I just didn't know what yet. We sat on the couch like we always did. I tucked one leg under me and held my mug of tea with both hands, though I wasn't really drinking. Pastor Marcus sat at the far end, relaxed but upright, like someone trying not to overstep. The conversation started like it always did, light. Church updates. A neighbor who got baptized last Sunday. Someone's birthday coming up. But then it shifted. He looked at me after a pause and said, "You've been carrying too much lately. I can see it in your eyes." I let out a small laugh, meant to brush it off, but it came out softer than I intended. It's been a long year. I said, not quite meeting his gaze. He nodded. You know, Marissa's strength isn't about holding everything together all the time. Sometimes it's about letting someone else see what you're holding. I looked up, surprised by the gentleness in his voice. It wasn't pity. It wasn't advice. It felt like noticing. You and Andrew, are you two okay? The question sat in the air between us like a fragile thing. I hesitated, not because I didn't have an answer, but because I didn't know how to say it out loud. We're fine. I mean, we don't fight or anything. I trailed off. Live next to each other instead of with each other. He finished gently. I blinked, then nodded. That happens more often than people admit, he said. There was a quiet after that, not uncomfortable, just heavy with the things not said. And then he smiled barely. You always smell like something peaceful, like clean laundry or rain. I looked at him, startled. I opened my mouth to reply, but nothing came. He looked away quickly, like maybe he hadn't meant to say it aloud. It could have been harmless. It should have been harmless. But the way his eyes met mine a moment later, holding just a second too long, that's when I felt it. A flicker. Nothing more. But it was enough to make the room feel smaller. Enough to make me wonder why my heart had skipped a beat. We had gone quiet again. The kind of quiet that doesn't feel restful, more like a pause that asks a question neither of us wants to answer. I stood up to refill the kettle. Marcus followed me into the kitchen, but he didn't speak. He leaned against the doorway, hands in his coat pockets, watching me in silence. I could feel his gaze. Not heavy, not intrusive. Just present. It followed the movement of my hands, the way I adjusted the tie on my robe, even though it wasn't coming undone. Then everything stopped. The lights flickered once, then again. And then the house went dark. I froze. The sudden silence from the fridge and the ceiling fan made the stillness even louder. I turned to Marcus. He didn't move, didn't speak. Power's out, I said quietly. Probably the storm. He nodded once. You got candles? Yeah. Drawer by the microwave. I walked to the drawer, pulled it open, and lit one small white candle. The flame caught quickly, casting a soft flicker of light across the room. I held it between us. Marcus stepped closer, reaching out slowly. Let me. Our hands brushed as he took the candle from me. He set it gently on the counter. His fingers lingered half a second longer than necessary. Then he stepped back, but only slightly. The silence returned, but it wasn't empty. It was charged, tense, full of something neither of us had a name for. I could hear my breathing now, slower, shallower. He looked at me, really looked, not with judgment, not even with desire, just attention. And then he said it. If I kissed you right now, would you stop me? He didn't move, his voice barely above a whisper. I didn't answer. Not because I didn't know what to say, but because any answer felt like a door I couldn't close once opened. I didn't step forward, but I didn't move back either, and neither did he. There was no kiss, no touch, only space. But that space felt like it held everything. The past we never talked about, the present we were pretending not to feel, and the future neither of us dared imagine. There was a breath between us, and in that breath, there was everything. The silence had settled again, but it wasn't peaceful. It was loud, the kind of silence that hums beneath your skin. Marcus and I were still standing in the kitchen. The candle burned low between us, its light flickering against the cabinets. Neither of us moved. And then the sound. Keys. Turning in the lock. We both froze. There's a kind of panic that doesn't scream. It just holds you in place, wide-eyed and breathless. The door opened. Andrew stepped inside. He wasn't supposed to be home until tomorrow night. That had been the plan. He walked in slowly, suitcase in one hand, phone in the other. His brow furrowed the moment he stepped over the threshold, like he felt something was off before he even saw it. His eyes swept the room. The candlelight. Me in my robe. Marcus standing only a few feet away. He didn't speak at first, just looked. "Hey," he said finally. His voice was flat. "What's going on?" I opened my mouth. Nothing came out. Marcus cleared his throat. "Andrew, I just came by to check on Marissa. We were just talking." Andrew set the suitcase down, slow and careful, like he didn't trust his own movements yet. Like he was still deciding what to believe. "Talking," he repeated. Not loud, not angry, but sharp enough to cut the air. I stepped forward. He stopped by earlier. I wasn't expecting him. We made some tea. "Tea?" Andrew said, again glancing at the candle. Then after a pause, "Why were the lights off?" Marcus answered calm. "There was an outage about 10 minutes ago." Andrew looked toward the hallway like he didn't believe it, but he didn't argue either. Not yet. He stepped aside. "You mind giving us a minute?" Marcus hesitated, then gave me one last look, a mix of apology and something else I couldn't name, and walked toward the door. Andrew moved, just slightly blocking his path. "You two were just sitting in the dark?" he asked. Marcus's jaw tightened. "We weren't doing anything wrong." "Didn't say you were," Andrew replied. He finally stepped aside. Marcus left without another word. The door clicked shut behind him. Silence. Not the silence of tension anymore. This one was colder. I turned to Andrew. His eyes weren't on me. He was staring at the candle, the mugs on the counter, the towel I'd left on the chair. The outline of a moment he hadn't been part of. "Andrew," I began. "Nothing happened," I said. And it was true. But the truth didn't matter as much as the timing. He didn't say anything, and that somehow hurt more than if he had screamed. Andrew didn't sleep in the bedroom that night. He didn't say anything after Marcus left. He just picked up a blanket and disappeared into the guest room. I lay awake for hours, listening to the hum of the refrigerator, the rain still tapping the windows, my own heartbeat louder than it should have been. Every few minutes, I looked at the door, hoping he'd walk back in. He never did. The next morning, the silence was still there. He moved around the kitchen like a guest. No eye contact, no questions, just motion. "I'll be gone most of the day," he said, grabbing his keys. And that was it. He didn't ask where I was going, and I didn't tell him. I went to the park. There's a trail by the lake tucked behind the trees. Quiet, neutral, safe. Marcus was already there, sitting on a bench, hands clasped together like he was praying, but not really. I sat next to him. Neither of us spoke for a full minute. Then he asked, "Are you okay?" I shrugged. "Not really." He nodded slowly. "Me neither." Another pause. "I'm sorry," he said, "for putting you in that position, for staying when I should have left." I looked at him. "But you didn't." He winced. "No, I didn't." He turned toward me. "You made me feel seen. That's not an excuse, but it's the truth. And I didn't realize how much I missed that until it happened. I nodded, quiet, because I felt it too. Not love, not even desire, just being noticed. We didn't do anything I said, but it still feels like something happened. Marcus looked down. It did. He didn't reach for me, didn't try to justify it. Just let the truth sit there between us. I spoke softly. You were the only person who looked at me like I wasn't fading. He looked at me like he wanted to say something more. But instead, he said, I'll go, if you want me to. I didn't answer. Not because I wanted him to stay, but because I didn't know what I wanted anymore. It was late afternoon when Marcus knocked again. I shouldn't have opened the door. I knew that, but I did. He stood there, same hoodie from the day before, hair damp from the missed eyes, tired. I shouldn't be here, he said right away. I know, I replied. Still, I stepped aside. We stood in the middle of the living room, the same space, the same silence, but now laced with a tension neither of us could ignore. Let me just say this, he said. I'm not here to cross any line. I just need to be honest. I nodded barely. I never looked at you that way. Not until recently. But when I did, I couldn't stop. He looked ashamed, like every word tasted wrong, but had to be said. I think he paused. I think I could fall in love with you. I looked down, not ready to face what that meant. And that's when the door opened again. Andrew. He stepped in slow, calm, too calm. He saw us standing there. Nothing happened. No touch, no closeness. But the air told its own story. He didn't flinch, didn't yell. He just looked at Marcus. You two really thought I didn't see this coming. Marcus opened his mouth, but Andrew held up a hand. Don't, he said. Don't insult both of us with an excuse. Then he turned to me. You knew what this was, he said. You felt it too. I stayed quiet. He walked past us into the kitchen, set his phone down on the counter like it meant nothing. Then he looked at me again. You might want to check your email. What I figured, if we're being honest, the whole church should hear it. My stomach dropped. You didn't, I did, he said. You're not the only one who knows how to record. My blood went cold. Marcus looked at me, eyes wide, and that was when I realized this wasn't the end. It was the beginning of something far messier. He didn't sleep in the house that night. Andrew left. No note. No goodbye. Just gone. I woke up alone. The bedroom untouched. The pillow beside me cold. The robe I'd worn the day before still hung by the stairs like a quiet reminder of the moment everything shifted. I didn't eat. I didn't shower. I just moved through the house like I wasn't really part of it. I checked my phone out of habit. There it was. A message from the church board. Subject line, urgent, recorded conversation involving Pastor Marcus Tate and Mrs. Marissa Lang. I didn't open it. I didn't need to, because I already knew what it said, because I'd lived it. That night, I didn't sleep. Not a minute. I paced the floor. I sat at the edge of the bed. I went to the kitchen. I stood by the window and watched the porch light flicker like it couldn't decide whether to stay on or give up. The silence was the loudest thing I'd ever heard. And sometime near dawn, the knock came. 3 soft taps. I knew it was him before I opened the door. Marcus. He looked like he hadn't slept either. Same hoodie, same tired eyes. But something in his face was different. He looked like a man trying to put something back together, but already knowing he couldn't. I just needed to see if you were okay, he said. I didn't answer. He stepped inside slowly. "I'm not here to start anything," he said. I just, I need you to know something." He paused. "I never meant to ruin anything. I didn't plan this. But the truth is, I noticed you when no one else did. And once I did, I couldn't unsee it." He looked at me like he was asking for forgiveness and permission at the same time. And then softly, he added, "I think I could have loved you in another life." I swallowed hard. "That's the problem," I whispered. "We only get one life." He nodded, didn't argue, and then he turned and walked out. This time, he didn't look back, and the ache that left behind was louder than any word he could have said. Sometimes, betrayal doesn't look like cheating. It doesn't scream. It doesn't shatter glass or slam doors. Sometimes, betrayal just whispers. It lingers in the silence, in a conversation that lasted a few minutes too long, in a hand that stayed just 1 second too late. Marissa didn't have an affair, not by most definitions, but something still broke. And that break started long before Marcus ever knocked on her door. Because the truth is, distance doesn't happen overnight. It creeps in slowly, in the missed conversations, the quiet dinners, the good night said from across the room, until one day someone looks at you like you matter, and it stops you cold. This story isn't just about temptation. It's about the danger of being unseen, of becoming strangers in the same house. And maybe the scariest part, it can happen to any of us if we stop choosing each other every day. So, if you're married or in a relationship, ask yourself, when's the last time you truly looked at the person you love, not passed by them, not checked on them, but really saw them? Because sometimes the people who seem fine are just very good at hiding the fact that they're fading. If this story made you think about someone in your life, say something to them today. And if you've ever felt invisible in your own relationship, share a dot in the comments. You're not alone. Thank you to everyone who's been listening to the stories on this channel. Your presence, your comments, your quiet nods, they remind us why we keep sharing. If this story stayed with you, subscribe, because the next one might be even closer to home. Now, take a breath. And maybe tonight, look a little longer at the person beside you.